numbers, 258, House Bill, and Senate Bill 178. So we're calling it a procedures and standards bill. It's basically a cleanup bill. So everything in here is fairly vanilla, at least that is our intent. So Charlotte, if you could scroll up a little bit so we can get to the first actual change, that would be great.
Scroll down.
We're down. Up, down. Okay. I don't think that's the first one. Okay. So at the very top of this page, page 2, lines 1 and 2, you'll see in bolded text the words by affirmative vote of the commission. So this section of COMAR is the list of the types of regulations that, I'm sorry, this isn't that section. This is the section about, actually this is the section. It's the section about when the commission can do updates to the regulations. And our procedure for doing that has always been that before we post regulations in the Maryland Register, one, like we're going to do today with you all, we talk to all of our stakeholders about them. We go through a very long process. And then the next thing that happens is that the commission actually votes on the draft. And that vote is an affirmative vote for the staff to proceed with the rulemaking process, which is when it actually gets published in the Maryland Register and that formal process takes place. That's always been our procedure, and we're just memorializing it here. So we're not really changing our procedures or how things happen vis-a-vis local governments. It's just a simple change on here, not a change, but just to put it in our regulations for the first time that this is our actual process. We also, the commission, votes on the regulations once they go through that first initial regulatory process because they have to be republished. So the commission does it twice. So that's just a little aside. As we go further down the page to line 11, you'll see a change where we're repealing 6-year and we're inserting 10-year. This change was something that actually happened in the 2024 legislative session with regard to how frequently you all update your comprehensive reviews. Many of you will probably remember that. It was changed in other parts of the statute and we missed it here. So it's a simple correction. So it's consistent with the other section of the natural resources article. The next area is 1808.1. And that is the part of the statute that talks about growth allocation and gives directions to both the commission and local governments about how to locate proposed new IDA or LDA areas. And most of you are very familiar with this. These are the standards for when you're locating a new development activity that's RCA. It needs to be near, you know, a limited development area or an intensely developed. It has to be contiguous. So current wording is adjacent. You'll see that in brackets. It's proposed for repeal. And then in bold and all caps are the words contiguous and adjoining. And the intent behind this is to make it clear about what we mean by nearby. And you're going to see those words that repeal and replace a couple different places throughout this section. So I can keep scrolling, Charlotte. You'll scroll down to 1809. Right, there we go. And then, okay, you can stop right there. So in 1809, this is a section of our statute that is specific to different, when you all are proposing program amendments or refinements, or when you're proposing a mapping mistake. And all we're doing here is simply adding the vesting date for properties that are within the Atlantic Coastal Bays critical area. When the law was updated in 2002 to include the Atlantic Coastal Bays critical area, we just never got the vesting date in this section. And we've been seeing some mapping mistakes as time has gone on in the Atlantic Coastal Bays. So we just want to make sure that the vesting date is there. And that date matches the date that that program went into effect in the Atlantic Coastal Bays. So it's not changing a process or any rules. We're just memorializing it in the statute. Further down, you're going to see some bolded text. Charlotte has it now. It's on line, starting on lines 20 through 22. And this is about when a local government has submitted a program refinement, and it's not acted on by the chair. And what it does is, and we actually put this in the law again in 2024. So again, this is a cleanup type of deal. It refers back to subparagraphs 1 and 2 above, which are not highlighted, but they're on the screen. Actually, Charlotte, if you could scroll up just a tad so they can see one. There we go. It talks about within 30 days, when we accept a proposal from you all to change an adopted program, the chair can make a determination about what process, and many of you are familiar with this. He can choose it to go through the amendment process or to go through what's called a refinement process, which is a much shorter time frame. It's more streamlined, and that's a choice that he can have. And then he has to notify the commission of his determination at the next meeting. But a couple of years ago in 2024, on lines 17 and 18, we inserted or a subsequent meeting if the local jurisdiction requests and the chair approves an extension. We've had a couple situations in a couple different counties where something happened during the time frame that we have to get things approved by. And that has kind of messed things up where the county has to withdraw and start the process all over again. And the line 17 and 18 that we put in the law in 2024, and I hope I'm getting this right, so anybody who's listening to me here, correct me. Those help us. It's kind of like a stay, you know? So if you guys tell us, oh, we need some time, can you just put it on hold? That's line 17 and 18. So that's what the bolded information or the lines in 20 through 22 are referring to. We got that in the amendment section of this part of the law, but we missed it in the refinement section. So that's what that's about. Hopefully that wasn't too confusing. And then further down the page on line 30, you'll see there's a repeal, brackets around 90, and then bolded 130 days. And this is in the, we're proposing to add time to this for the simple reason that this doesn't happen often. In fact, I don't remember this happening hardly at all, and I've been here like 30 years. But there can be an instance where when the chair has determined that something is a refinement sent in by a local government, and when he sends that notice to the commission can override that. And what that means is it turns into a program amendment. And as you all know, a program amendment requires the chair then to appoint a 5-member panel, the panel to set up a public hearing in the affected, local jurisdiction. So that adds time onto the whole process. But we're already within this 90-day constricted time frame. So we're proposing to make it 130 days, which would match what is already in the statute under program amendments. So that is what that change is about. Okay, Charlotte, give me a scroll here. We're scrolling all the way down to 1815.1. And I hope I didn't miss any. So if I did, you guys call me out. This section has to do with when folks cut or clear violations. And so what happened, I want to say it was 2 sessions ago, maybe 3, the forest conservation law, and many of you probably know about this, was updated. And part of those updates included changing around what types of licensed professionals would be acceptable by the Department of Natural Resources for reviewing plans. So that's all this is. It is simply matching what's already in other parts of the natural resources article with regard to what types of professionals are certified to do these plan reviews. And that's what the other changes on page 6 in the first paragraph. And the final thing is something that also doesn't change the world. I'm trying to find it though. I don't see it up on the screen. I'm looking for the, is it? Oh, I see it. So at the bottom of page 5, lines 32 and 33, I'm sorry, I skipped over it.
Yeah.
There's a repeal of the word department. And in this statute, department refers to the Department of Natural Resources. And that's always been incorrect. Because we all know all these years that you all have been doing this work, then when somebody cuts trees and there's a fine, the money goes to the local jurisdiction. So we're memorializing that existing process. So that's all that change is about. And then finally at the bottom is a repeat of that same licensing requirements by certified foresters and licensed foresters. So I'm going to move to the variance bill. Unless folks have questions about this bill, I'm not sure how my time is going. Are you guys watching me?
You know,
Am I doing
halfway
okay?
through.
Okay. Oh, good. Is there any, I don't see any hands right now, but if something comes up after I'm done the variance bill, just you know, let me know. So the variance bill doesn't have a cross file, so it's only going to be House Bill 247. And if you can scroll down, Charlotte, through the beginnings of it. The purpose of this variance bill is a couple of things, but one is that it will provide greater assistance with, you know, if you've got planning directors making administrative variance decisions, if you've got administrative hearing officers, and also you all basically have Board of Appeals, or some of you go to a planning board if there's an appeal. It's to help with determining when something meets the variance standards. And you're all familiar with the basic 5 that have always been in the law pretty much for all these years. But what has happened over all these years, as you all know, we've had a lot of court cases that have given us a lot more direction and clarity in how to make these decisions. So the insertions that you're going to see in here are from court cases. So the first one that Charlotte has up here is, it's all bolded because it's all new text. So starting on line 17, when requesting a variance for an accessory structure or use, and this does not apply, because we've had this question, this does not apply to accessory dwelling units. Okay, does not apply. We're talking about sheds, pools, that kind of stuff. Text. A rebuttable presumption exists that an existing accessory structure use on the parcel lot demonstrates reasonable and significant use. So if they got it, they may already have reasonable significant use. That's for either, you know, the planning professionals in your office or Board of Appeals to determine. And then it says the local jurisdiction may not accept a variance to authorize a use that is not allowed in that classification. So say it's a resource conservation area and somebody wants to put a commercial use in and it's not part of your RCA use list, they can't request a variance to that use list. They also cannot adjust the amount or type of mitigation required by the critical area regs and your local program. So, you know, maybe they got some type of mitigation required as part of a building permit or grading permit, and they want it reduced. They can't ask for a variance to that. And then also they can't ask for a variance to provide relief that could be obtained through, some of you already have available administrative processes that's approved as part of your local program. Not all of you do, some of you do. So when you do, that would be the first step. It wouldn't automatically jump to the next level. And this also doesn't require any of you who don't have an administrative process to have one. However, if you want to have one, we can work with you on that. But I just wanted to make that clear. So we're getting down to more of the standards that without the variance, you know about, the applicant will be deprived of the use of the land or structure. And then the applicant has to demonstrate that there's a substantial need for the variance, that it's not based on the following, which I know I've personally sat in Board of Appeals hearings over the years, and I know you all have too, and heard things like convenience, personal preference, or financial advantage. And I think that's just a general planning principle, but this also came from the court, so we're throwing it in there. That the applicant demonstrates that the development can't be otherwise located, say, out of the buffer. This is what most of our variances are, right? It's usually about the buffer. And then they to make a comparison only to other properties or structures that are located in the buffer, located in the critical area, that those properties were developed after the adoption of your critical area program. So people can't compare their property, say they want a pool they can't compare their property to a neighbor down the street that has a pool if that pool was put in 1960. So that's the concept there. And then where there's conforming and legally authorized at the time of development. Again, kind of the example I just gave you. If someone was issued a permit for something that was conforming and legal at the time of that development, well, 1960, they can't compare it to that. Similarly situated, and if it's in a modified buffer area, in accordance with the requirements for your program's modified buffer areas, okay? And then a local board of appeals, this is coming out of the standards down and working into the actual process on line 27. If there's a two-step jurisdiction, I'm going to use Anne Arundel as an example because I'm familiar with Anne Arundel. They have an administrative hearing officer where all of their variances start. And then if that application is appealed by some party, the next step in their jurisdiction is to go to a board of appeals. The board of appeals would hear on the record an appeal of the administrative officer's decision or whatever entity, could be your planning director, on a critical area application on the record, meaning it's not de novo anymore. So it would be the same record that the hearing officer or the planning director heard or had before them when they made their original decision. The board sees the same exact thing. And then the board would grant deference to that, their findings of fact, right? So we're using the word administrative hearing officer, but in your jurisdiction, it could be another, it's whatever your process is locally. So don't get hung up on those words. I just wanted to make that clear. So that's the variance bill. Does anybody here have anything to add to that? And then questions on either bill, I'd happy to take any. We're working on it through the legislature now. We have hearings coming up on both of these bills in the House Environment and Transportation Committee on Wednesday, February 11th. So you can tune in and watch us if you want. And happy to take any questions or comments. And if you think of some afterwards, please reach out to me directly. I'd be happy to discuss any questions you have specifically about your, county or town or city, anytime. You guys know how to get me. So I appreciate it.
Thank you, Lisa. I think the next step is moving on to Jen. And she's going to provide an update on notification regulations. So what do we want to see coming to the commission at this point? Obviously, I'll let Jen describe it.
Can you
Jen?
guys hear me okay? Yep, can you hear me okay?
Yep, you're good.
Okay, should be sharing my screen. Welcome to the 300th day of January, where everyone, including me, I guess you guys in the office are not snowed in anymore, but I'm still snowed in with 3 kids. So it's been fun. You might hear some background noise, which I will apologize in advance. More recently effective reg changes relates to projects to which local jurisdictions should notify commission staff on. You guys should have received a email update of when the reg changes were effective. Also, people who have been inputting projects into Salesforce may get some rejections back or notice saying that it doesn't meet the new reg changes. So you won't be able to proceed through Salesforce. So I'm just going to quickly kind of go over what those changes are today. Basically, we'll still receive all variances, no matter the critical area jurisdiction designation, and all local projects. So any project that is an action initiated by the local jurisdiction on private lands or even on local jurisdiction lands will still need to come through us through our normal processes, which is either under a consistency report or will be submitted for full commission review. Within the resource conservation area, we still pretty much will see everything. When there are subdivisions, site plans, lot consolidation, reconfiguration, special exceptions, conditional uses, zoning map amendments, and rezonings, all of that still should be coming to commission staff. Big changes, I think, are really here for LDA, IDA. We only want to see projects that have a HPA impact, or that the project itself is because of an approved growth allocation. So I think with the inputs in Salesforce, it'll, when you go through the few pages that will require your inputs, they have a whole list of HPAs. And even if there's like buffer on the site, if it's not impacting that HPA, you don't need to check the box. We don't need to see it. Also with solar energy generating systems, we want to see major and minor if located in the LDA or RCA, wholly or partially. And also just final approvals. We sometimes consistently get them from jurisdictions, sometimes not, but it's important that for any project type that is listed of what we want to see, that we're also getting those final approvals. It just helps us to ensure that we have a complete record of what was reviewed and approved locally. And decisions. The decisions for variance is still very important that we're getting those within the required timeline because of the appeal potential. So just some key takeaways. Again, anything really related to RCA, variances, local projects, we'll still be receiving them just as normal. And then anything within the LDA, IDA for private developments besides solar generating energy systems, only when there is an impact to an HPA. And then also with the solar projects, if it's located within the LDA or RCA, and then just please keep providing us those final approvals and decisions. And that is all I have. I know we have some time. I can go into Salesforce and kind of do a test submittal. If anyone would like to see that, I'm happy to do that. Also, if you have any questions on the more updated reg changes, happy to be here to answer. Stephanie?
Yeah, thank you. I have a question. So when it comes to the final approval submittals, in the Salesforce or the portal, is it the same process? Because I know we've tried to submit some admins. Is there a separate category if it is a final approval within the process of submitting, or is it standard, same application, same process?
It would fall under a resubmittal of a project that's already been
But if we don't
then
have the code or the like application number through critical area commission, will it still be submitted? Can it still get submitted, I guess, is the question. I know for resubmittals, usually you have to have the application number.
You should have, if we're getting the final, that's assuming that we've received the initial application that we've provided feedback on. And so if it's a final approval for the project types that we require notification, then it should be a record in Salesforce. And so if you're missing that code, you can always reach out. But also, I think it's relevant to the project file name. And then we have Bob on the line if there are like more Salesforce, I think, input related questions, but it still should find it by the name.
I have one more question, and that might clarify the question I just had. So the requirements for sending the final, it lists items 1 through 8, but not all items, depending on the designation, require it to be sent for review. But so if it's not required to be sent for notification, we do not have to send the final.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I was a little confused by the yes and no's, but okay. That clarifies it for me then.
Other little bit of caveat to that is we do still, like for erosion control, buffer management plans,
Right.
we don't even have a Salesforce input with that. We generally deal through communication and review coordination through the Maryland Department of Environment Joint Permit Application processes. And we keep record of that kind of separately for Salesforce. So for the jurisdictions that are sending those final BMPs, that could just be an email to the commission staff, because we are
Okay.
not, those types of documents aren't even within Salesforce currently.
Okay, so the major buffer management plan and the shoreline stabilization, those can be sent to directly to our plan reviewer or to the CAC admin email, which is best.
And I would just say for the BMPs for which we don't receive notification on, or that we don't require notification on, we don't need to see aside for shoreline erosion control, because that's still how the regulation reads. So if a project that's not requiring notification, like say you're having a development in the LDA that requires buffer establishment, because we're not seeing that initially, we wouldn't see it. We wouldn't see that buffer management plan at all. But for the ones that we are still receiving notification on, and the shoreline erosion control projects, the way the regs currently still read is that would still be submitted. So yes, please coordinate with the commission planner, your point of contact on those.
Okay, so I guess, sorry, I have another question then. It's just not clear, I guess, the way it's listed. It just says a major buffer management plan. So it makes me think that any major buffer management plan that is approved, we have to send. It doesn't caveat into the shore stable, like it has the shore stabilization, but if we have a major buffer management plan, for example, that is someone, you know, is developing a property, putting a house on it, over 5,000 square feet of lot coverage, you do not need to see that then?
Yes, because it kind of goes back to A1, which is for the categories of applications we want to see notification on.
Even though
So it's a little bit circular in how it reads, but
even though it's listed separately as C, 5C?
And you are looking at the new updated regs, correct? But yes, that's the
For
intent.
the sheet that was sent. Okay.
Oh, yes. Yeah. If you look at the way that the updated regs kind of read it, I think it's a little bit more clear. But yes, that's the intent.
Okay.
We just want to see those major buffer management plans that are a part of a project type for which we require notification.
Okay.
I think, yeah, you're welcome. I think Nate is next.
Yeah. Hey, Jennifer. So I guess just to clarify what Stephanie was asking, so for a residential project, that would need to be submitted.
If it's within so we pretty much still have status quo of how things were previously operating with resource conservation area. Where it really significantly changes is within the limited development area and intensely developed area, for which and habitat protection area is also not impacted. We wouldn't see those project types. Unless it's a solar project, minor or major within the LDA and RCA.
Okay.
Did I just add more confusion?
Yeah. So yes or no, you wouldn't need to receive it for a dwelling outside the 100-foot buffer.
Generally speaking, correct. That is correct. No.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. Oxford, not sure who with Oxford's on today.
Hi, Jennifer, it's Ashley.
Hi,
I had
Ashley.
hello. I just popped a question in the chat. Didn't know if you saw it. For the LDA solar, all our LDAs are generally residential. Do you still need to see it if it's a rooftop mounted residential solar?
Nope. Just the ones that would classify as minor and major.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. Any other questions? And please, if in doubt, just please reach out to the planning staff. We're always here to help hopefully clear the path and not make it more confusing. But we're always here to help.
All right, thanks, Jen, for that update. So moving on, Kate Durant is going to provide an update on some enforcement regulatory updates and future reg changes that the commission are considering moving forward. You know, feel free to voice any comments or concerns you have with these ideas. It will help frame our work moving forward. So, Kate, I'll let you take it away.
Thanks, Michael. Hi all. I am not turning on my camera because my Wi-Fi is a little spotty today. So I apologize. But I am going to start by sharing our, excuse me, sharing our Chapter 15 enforcement regulations that went into effect on December 11th of last year. These can be found in the online COMAR, so you do have access to them. And what we did with Chapter 15 is we took all of the enforcement information that was in the statute, in the law, and created this chapter to help all of you guys have a better understanding of what the jurisdictions need to have as sort of minimum requirements for an enforcement policy. We have some definitions. We talk about applicability. So this is not an opt-in program. This is enforcement. So we are requesting that each jurisdiction has or meets the minimum requirements for enforcement. And this allows us to, or it allows you to handle any violations. And it hopefully is going to provide some consistency and continuity across the jurisdictions. I know that we've had comments in the past from jurisdictions that were requesting some help in how to set up an enforcement program. And these minimum requirements really lay the groundwork for you guys. So we talk about how local jurisdictions have the ability to obtain access and enter a property, to identify violations, or issue a notice of violation. Ideally, you're making reasonable effort to contact the property owner before obtaining access. But if the property owner denies you entry, you do have options for how to enter the property to pursue enforcement. And then we also outline with E here. This is a big one for everybody to help out, we hope, is that within 30 days of identifying the violation, a notice of violation letter should be sent, and that should include a list of things, a description of the facts, references to the provisions of the natural resources article of the law, a notice of the right to file an appeal of their notice of violation, letting them know if they are eligible to apply for an after the fact variance, but that doing so waives their right to appeal, and then giving them some information about how they can bring their project back into compliance, such as paying fines, creating restoration plans, mitigation plans, etc. And we also want jurisdictions to include a deadline for response. That's something that we've definitely seen jurisdictions struggle with. So we have other options. You know, jurisdictions need to track the deadlines, communicate in writing with the violator if they fail to meet their deadlines, and then if they don't resolve the violation, or they don't respond to your written communication, then you also have some other options where you can request assistance from directly from the commission. You can refer it to us. You can also refer the situation to your local jurisdiction's Office of Law. And file suit for damages if it's a clearing issue. So you could take them to court to get them to pay for the cost of replanting the trees. And then again, it's a abatement, which is just stopping the violation essentially. And then a restoration plan, because restoration is returning it to its original state. So if it was a clearing violation, they would need to have a restoration plan that restored, replanted everything. And then mitigation is always on top of that. So that's why sometimes we see people who do an after the fact variance and they need to mitigate at, we've seen it where they need to mitigate at 3-to-1 because they cleared in the buffer. So the restoration for like the regular mitigation for clearing in the buffer is 3-to-1. But because it was an after the fact variance, that's an additional 4-to-1. So they actually have to replant at 7-to-1. So they need a restoration plan and a mitigation plan, but they can be tied together. And we kind of spell that out for you guys. And then we talk a little bit about in 04, the fees and penalties. Just to let your violators know that, yes, these are offenses and that they can pay a penalty. That is up to the local jurisdictions. We are more than happy to help you with that because that does get a little confusing sometimes, I think. But if you guys want to set up a penalty schedule, we're here for you. Just give me a call. I'll help you out. And then we wanted to reiterate that you can ask for assistance from the commission or the attorney general, and that we have some time frames in here just to help keep enforcement actions moving, because that's a big thing that we saw. So again, this is all in Comar. We should be adding it to the model ordinance soon, so you don't need to update your codes right away. We do have language that you can just use what is written in Comar if you run into an enforcement action, even if it's not directly in your code. It's here for you. So does anybody have any questions about the enforcement regulations before I move on to our discussion of what we're hoping to propose for new regulations at some point this year? All right. So yes, I will drop this link and I'll do that right now. Let's see. This is the new version, just so you guys know. Comar is updating how you can search. So this link should work. The other option is, this is the old Comar. Right, this is what we're used to seeing. So we were looking at the new version because I think it's cleaner. But you can always search by title, and then which is 27 for critical area. Subtitle is 01 for local program development. And then it's chapter 15. And then it breaks each regulation down into smaller sections. So like if you click on the minimum requirements, you can sort of see that it's laid out differently. This is going to be a really long one. I'll put this one in too because it's regular Comar. and it takes up an entire page. So hopefully between those two links, you should be able to access it. Does anyone have any other questions about the enforcement? If you have a chance to review it and you suddenly realize that you do have questions, please reach out to me. I'm more than happy to answer any of your questions. I wrote the language, so hopefully I have a good understanding of how we can help you implement it if needed. All right. Seeing no questions, I will move on to the second part of my presentation. And I'm just going to leave my window up for right now. We are currently working on drafting regulations that address climate resiliency and equity, as we are required to do from the 2024 bill that passed the legislation. It requires that we incorporate climate resiliency and equity into how we address critical area projects. So we are working on writing some of that language. Charlotte will talk a little bit about some of the equity things that we've been working on. Her group has worked very hard, and that will be next. So I'm going to skip over equity a little bit, but know that there will be some version of equity included in our regulations in the future. And then for climate resiliency, we were looking for models of how to include the information needed for local projects. And we realized that we have had a working model, if you will, for state projects for over 10 years. They've been required for much longer to at least look at their coastal resilience for the projects they are proposing. And the way that we do that with the state projects is that we have a worksheet that they fill out. It is available online. So I will also put this in the chat. Give me 1 second. So you can see what the state projects need to look at. And what it does is the state projects look at projections for sea level rise. And they look at the lifetime of their project. And they try to determine how much risk they are willing to take and what the likelihood is of their project flooding and how much of an issue that could be. So that information allows them to hopefully determine better siting if they need to build something new, in an effort to keep new development outside of projected sea level rise. This is, for the most part, a desktop analysis, as you can see. And we also have the state agencies look at climate change vulnerability viewer to look at what sort of nuisance flooding may occur, all in an effort to, again, keep the projects out of the area that is most likely to flood in the future or is currently experiencing nuisance flooding, which may continue to get worse. Because nuisance flooding is also sunny day flooding. We see a lot of it in Annapolis, unfortunately. And we've been seeing more and more of it. And then we just have some spots for the state agencies to describe what sort of practices they are going to implement, in an effort to combat those hazards that they may experience. We are thinking at this point that for local projects that come to the commission for approval, and this would be where we are headed. Also, the growth allocation policy was recently updated, and that also includes a requirement now to address coastal resiliency, much in the same way that I'm showing you here, where we are hoping that during the design process of the project, coastal resiliency issues are at least looked at, looking at sea level rise, looking at nuisance flooding, looking at regular flooding, and ways to keep future development or proposed development out of those areas, so that in 20 or 30 years, we don't have buildings that are just being flooded on a regular basis. If we can be a little forward thinking, it may be beneficial. So that's sort of where we're headed at this point with the climate resiliency. Language is still being written because it's a complex thing to discuss and write about. So does anyone have any questions?
Well, thank you, Kate, for that insight and what's coming. We're gonna move on to Charlotte with a review of the PACO guidance policy. But first, I wanted to mention that Jen is offered to do a run through of submitting a project through Salesforce afterwards. So if you're interested in that, stick around once Charlotte's done. And I'm gonna hand it off to Charlotte to talk about equity in the critical area.
Thank you, Michael. Okay, let's see. Okay, can everybody see my screen? Looks like it's good. Okay. All right, so yes, as Michael said, I am going to talk to you all a little bit about the participation, access, and community outcomes policy that the commission passed back in, or approved, I should say, back in October. So this policy governs actions taken by the commission, which would include projects and programs that come to the commission for approval, such as conditional approval projects or major development projects, text amendments, and also that includes growth allocations. So this policy was, sorry. This policy was crafted by the commission over multiple years, and it was spearheaded by a work group that was made up of commission members. And it was also presented to the full commission on multiple occasions throughout that process, and then officially approved, as Michael said, in October of last year. So the final document can actually be found on our website. There are three kind of main components to it. We have the policy itself, which kind of lays out the vision and purpose of the policy, and then also the 7 guiding principles that kind of make the framework of the policy. But then there's also a manual that is attached to this document, which lays out how to address those guiding principles. I think that would likely be the most useful part of this document for local planners. I'm going to walk through in more detail here in a second, but just kind of keep that in mind, because the manual is where you would find the tools that we recommend in order to address some of the new submittal requirements that are in the policy. And then also kind of the type of information we're looking for. And then finally, the third part of this is the implementation plan, which is kind of like the commission's to-do list that the policy is directing them to complete. So I am going to pull this up. Let's see if I can. Oops. Okay, hopefully you all are now seeing the document. This is available on our website. I can put the link in the chat afterwards. But I'm going to just walk through this with you all quickly. So this is the main part of the document, the policy itself. Table of contents, we have obviously executive summary, definitions list, and an introduction. Then we get to the purpose statement and vision statement. So the work group of the commission spent a good amount of time trying to craft these statements, but basically the purpose of this policy is to declare the critical area commissioner's commitment to the equitable distribution of the benefits and burdens of development, restoration, mitigation, public access, and conservation within the critical area. And so that should sound familiar to anyone who read the 2024 legislative bill that was approved by the General Assembly, because that equitable distribution of the benefits and burdens, that language is taken straight from that bill. The policy articulates principles and strategies such as inclusive representation and participation in the processes, procedures, and decisions by which the commission is governed. Policy also identifies methods and tools appropriate to carry out this commitment. And then the vision statement, the work group envisioned a Chesapeake and Atlantic coastal based critical area that benefits all Marylanders, ensuring the right for all people and communities to participate as equal partners. So then we get into the guiding principles. And like I said, there are 7 of these, and they really kind of lay out the framework of this policy. So the first is to consider and adapt to climate change. The second is to protect and improve habitat and water quality. The third is to increase and improve public access and accessibility. The fourth, to encourage representative and impactful public engagement. The fifth, to improve local government engagement. The sixth, to respect tribal concerns. And the final guiding principle is to improve accountability and transparency of the commission's work. So then we have laid out our implementation goals and metrics for success. So this is how the commission wants to measure the impact of this policy. Now that it's been approved, we can start implementing it, and then we are going to provide biannual reports on the impact of the policy itself, and those will be publicly available. So then we get into the manual, and like I said, this is kind of the place where I think local governments, this is the part that I think will be most useful to you. So I am going to walk through in a minute kind of how this policy might impact an application that comes to the commission. But here in the manual is where we kind of call out the specific tools and resources that an applicant before the commission should use in order to address some of the guiding principles that are laid out in the policy. So we call out obviously a couple different tools that are used to examine and evaluate the impacts of climate change. There are also, we also call out a couple different tools that look at the potential impacts from environmental pollution and degradation. So like MDE and VirusScreen. I think most of you are probably familiar with that. I am happy to do a tutorial for that for anyone who's interested. But that basically calls out where a environmental justice community is located, and that information is based on several different factors related to the pollution in that area and the potential vulnerability of the population to that pollution. We also recommend looking at the 5 Million Trees Initiative mapping tool, because that has identified communities that are underserved in terms of tree canopy specifically. So they are considered to have less tree canopy than other communities in the state. And also the DNR Park Equity Tool that is specifically geared towards public access locations throughout the state. And it can identify communities that might be lacking in public access. So we also kind of walk through here the new processes that this policy lays out, and that will be potentially part of an application now to the commission. So that is all here as well. I'm not going to go into a huge amount of detail. But then we get into, like I said, the implementation plan, which is basically the commission's to-do list for what we need to do now that this policy has been approved. And so I do just want to point out a lot of what is here is on our staff to accomplish and the commission. The primary element being creating guidance for you all on how to actually apply this policy and the information that will be needed as part of the submittal. So that is forthcoming. We will give you a heads up on when we're going to start applying that guidance. So stay tuned for that. We don't want to, spring anything on you all. There will be fair warning. So, yeah, like I said, stay tuned. But I am going to do a quick kind of run through of several examples of potential projects or program changes that might come to the commission, and then like the kind of information that we would potentially be asking for each of these examples. Okay, so the first example is for a growth allocation. And so in this example, the proposal was to go from LDA to IDA and then also from RCA to IDA. It was a split designated parcel. There is a proposed plan unit development project associated with this growth allocation. And there were, minimal buffer impacts that were going to be mitigated with plantings. There were also impacts to the 300-foot setback that was required for the RCA portion. And that was also mitigated with plantings. There was also, as part of this proposal, a living shoreline that provided kind of additional nutrient reduction to meet the buffer and 300-foot setback mitigation. So that was a little bit of an out-of-kind mitigation proposal that was associated with this project. And then there was also forest and developed woodland clearing that was mitigated with plantings, and then stormwater requirements that were addressed with various best management practices throughout the site. So when we think about what it might look like when this project, if this project were to come to the commission under the new policy, we actually created a guidance document already for growth allocations, because we did add in 2024 a new factor to the list of standards and factors that the commission must consider when reviewing a growth allocation. And that factor is to look at the impacts, environmental justice impacts from the proposed growth allocation. And so that actually went into effect Lisa, was that in October of 2024?
Yes.
Think so. Okay. And so that, because it was associated with the bill that was passed by the General Assembly in 2024, we knew that we needed to create guidance pretty quickly for you all. And we have actually had our first growth allocation requests come in under this guidance, where that equity factor needed to be addressed. But this growth allocation guidance is on our website. And so if you as a local planner are needing to submit a growth allocation, this guidance is there to help walk you through addressing that factor that was added to the law in 2024. So that would be something theoretically additional to the submittal requirements that we currently have for growth allocations in our regulations. And then we also would likely ask for a summary of the community outreach and coordination and public notice measures that were associated with the growth allocation. This goes back to some of the guiding principles in the participation, access, and community outcomes policies around like public engagement and ensuring that we are reaching the communities that are going to be impacted by these requests. So we are going to be likely asking local governments that submit for growth allocation to provide some type of summary of the type of outreach or public notice they did. And then just to kind of show what some of the tools that we've recommended using specifically with the growth allocation guidance, the first step is to kind of look up the site on MDE's EnviroScreen. And you can see here that this site is considered an environmental justice community. Let's see, you can actually download a report from the EnviroScreen that kind of gives you the score and also a breakdown of all of the factors contributing to that score. So anything over the 75th percentile, so like a 75 score here, would be considered an environmental justice community. Also, anything that has an individual factor score and any of these factors of 75 or more, if they have 3 factors that are 75 or more, I think MDE considers them to be an environmental justice community. So that kind of is some of the information that we're looking for in that growth allocation guidance document. So the next example is for a local project. So this was a project proposed by a local government that required conditional approval from the commission because for a couple of different reasons. It was an active recreational use located in the RCA, which is typically not allowed in the RCA. The proposed lot coverage was going to be over the 15% limit for the parcel. The jurisdiction at the time actually proposed some kind of unique out-of-kind mitigation in order to mitigate for those things. And this is actually an interesting example because there actually was kind of an equity component to this project, even though it came in years ago, well before that was a goal of the critical area law, or that consideration was required for projects coming in, because this proposal provided a use to a community that was considered an environmental justice community, and this was a use and need for that community. So I think that it's important to point out that while there may be some additional information that's needed as part of addressing the equity considerations for projects coming to the commission, it can also be a justification of need for that project. So that is certainly information that we want to be able to present to the commission. So if that is a factor for a project or program change that your jurisdiction is submitting, definitely provide us with that information when you send it in. Okay, so in this case, for a conditional approval, again, these would be kind of in addition to the basic information that we currently need. So we would be looking at the site data, using the tools described in the policy manual. So that's like the EnviroScreen or the 5 Million Trees Initiative, those kinds of, that kind of data that we're trying to collect about the site. Again, a summary of the community outreach and coordination and potential public notice that was done locally for the project that's being proposed. And then also the proposed mitigation measures, because I think the considerations around equity also provide additional flexibility in the types of mitigation I think that could be proposed for some of these projects. So if there is a public access component to the project, and especially if it is providing public access to a community that is lacking that or needs public access, I think that is an important factor to include. That's important information to include in your submittal. It's definitely information we want to know about. And again, here's just the MDE EnviroScreen image for this this area. It was, again, an environmental justice community. Here is the summary of the summary report showing, its final score and then all of the kind of factors contributing to that. And so the final example is less probably straightforward, I think, than those two examples. When you have a project, you have a project site. And so it's obviously those tools that we're recommending be used are really geared more towards a geographic area. So I think what you do for like a program change is going to be very different than what you might do for a project. So in this case, we're using an example of RCA use, adding farm stays to your RCA use list. And so here, what we're looking for is less site data and more kind of those other kind of contributing factors that might be useful in terms of the equity considerations laid out in the policy. So we do still want to know what community outreach was done and if there was public notice, what comments were received. But then it's a little bit more open-ended in terms of like any additional information that the county or municipality feels is relevant for the commission to consider. So for program changes, like a lot of times something like an RCA use is associated with a specific site. And so if that is the case, it could be useful to have some of that site data for where the proposed use is going to be implemented. If you have a specific site in mind, in some ways that could be useful to have some of that EnviroScreen data and the other tools that are laid out in the manual. We recently had a new RCA use that came to the commission, and part of the justification for the need of that use was that the jurisdiction is a very rural jurisdiction, and they needed more early childhood education in rural parts of the jurisdiction. And so this was a use associated with early childhood education because there was a need that was identified in the county and specifically in that area of the county for this use. So again, that's one of those kind of like additional factors that is really helpful for our staff to know when you're submitting a request like that, so that we can also provide that information to the commission. So I think those are all the examples I have. I tried to pick 3 that would be relevant to a local jurisdiction. If you have questions about any of those, definitely let me know. Really quick, just to kind of summarize where we're going. So we are currently, as Kate discussed, we are currently updating our regulations to require considerations for environmental justice and equity in addition to climate resiliency. But more specifically, we are, staff is currently working to create guidance for you all. And in terms of submitting projects and program changes to the commission for approval under the new participation, access, and community outcomes policy, our vision is to create guidance that is very easy to understand and hopefully succinct and clear. If you have questions or concerns about that, please let me know. That, like I said, that guidance you all will get a heads up on, once that is created. I think that is when we will start actually implementing what's laid out in the policy in terms of the additional information that we will be asking for. So, and then again, the implementation plan, like I said, is kind of our massive to-do list. So we are working through the other items laid out there. And with that, I think somebody, is there hand raised? Yes, I can definitely send a link to the growth allocation guidance document. Yes. Did somebody raise their hand, or was that just in the chat? It was just in the chat. Okay. Okay. With that, I will take any other questions then. Let me get the growth allocation guidance.
Go to the montage. Go to the montage, go back to the home page. And then hit the arrow. Hit that. Oh, here you go.
I'm looking for the growth allocation guidance.
I'm sorry.
I think
thought you were looking for that.
Sorry.
I'm so
I
sorry.
think somebody put
No, it is under local.
Okay,
Okay. I'm sorry, Shirley.
that's okay.
It's the,
Like, what?
it's under resources. The resources portion.
Thank you.
Sorry about that.
Okay.
Great.
Great. In this section.
All right. So I know we found a lot of information at you today, so thank you for bearing with us. I think we're going to hand it back to Jen to do a brief demonstration of submitting projects through Salesforce and how that may look like with the new notification regs. So Jen, if you're ready.
Yeah, let me see if I can. Give me a moment. Let me bring it back. Give me 1 second. No, I can't find it. Hold on. Technical difficulties. I got booted out of the office and now I'm working with one screen. There we go. Okay. So this should be what you see similarly when you are going to submit a project into Salesforce. So you pick, and can you guys see this okay as I move through? I can't hear anyone. Is that a thumbs up? I can't see you either. So you have to.
Yes.
Sorry.
I'm going to use Anne Arundel County as an example, just because I know that their code. I know their code a little bit by heart. So gonna when you get here, just as a little bit of a refresher, you have options, local project resubmission. So here is when you've already submitted, and then a program change. And just so we are all clear, program changes includes text amendments, mapping amendments, growth allocation, submittals. Even if there's like a potential project tied to the growth allocation is a goes through as a change of designation, which is a mapping change. So that's a program change. So once you pick your correct submittal, we're going to go through the projects. You fill all this wonderful information in, project date, project name, back to school, please. We're just going to put in an address, project description. We're just going to pretend this is an LDA subdivision. Application type, or subdivision. Then when you continue to go down, so if the site previously received growth allocation, you'll need to check that. That's going to allow you to move forward. If you don't, and it's an LDA subdivision, it's going to kick back, hopefully, when we go to the next one. You can check if you have the project number already, if it's a modified buffer area, and then on-site habitat protection areas. Here's where it's a little bit confusing, I believe. This is what we want to see if there's like potential impacts to those HPAs, because that's what's also going to prompt the next screen, which I thought we were working on trying to get this screen. So LDA, let's just say it's 15 acres, LDA, 00 RCA IDA. This is also important inputs, I guess. Yes, for the to prompt Salesforce to either say we need it or we don't. And so because I hit LDA subdivision with no HPA impacts and not tied to a growth allocation, this is what you should see, which is the submission doesn't need to be submitted for review. If you feel like this does meet the criteria, you can contact the planner. Would you like me to go through, another test for one that maybe I can go through one that does hit the criteria, and then it just should go to the next screen, which you're used to for submitting project types. But please feel free to raise hands as I kind of go through the inputs here. Let's see. We'll do a RCA sub. And if you are going through this and you're seeing issues, please feel free to reach out and contact us. Say that there's FIDs too, as well. Let's do like 60 acres. And then this will keep prompting you for the other inputs. And then once you go through that, it takes you on to uploading your files and any other relevant information that needs to be done. And when you keep going through that, it actually creates a file. So happy to do more, happy to take questions. I think some really good points of clarification was raised previously on what we need to see as it relates to the buffer management plans. We can talk about a different process that makes sense if we are receiving the major buffer management plans for which we require notification, that can be uploaded into Salesforce because we already have a project file for that. Another option for like shore erosion control, if you guys are sending that in for buffer management plan, since there is no file type. I mean, it's really trying to help streamline it on your end as well, because I understand it's still a process. If it's easier to submit them in the admin email like quarterly or some time frame that makes sense, we can definitely talk about that in greater detail or try to figure out a better process. It kind of really would depend on what works for you guys as well. So happy to talk about that in more detail, or we could set aside to set up a time to speak with the critical area planner with the local jurisdiction more one-on-one to see what works the best. And happy to run through some more, but you guys tell me. It's about, what is it, 11:30? Crickets?
I think we're good, Jen.
Okay.
Yeah.
Let me stop sharing.
All right. Yeah, so we threw a lot at you today. So Bob is going to do a quick run test through Salesforce to address your concerns, Mark. Yeah, we're happy to share any resources that we shared today. We could share Charlotte's presentation on PACO, but a lot of the other resources were shared through links in the chat, so please make notes of those.
I can put together an email of at least like on my end, and I
Yeah.
can do this as well too. So
Yeah, we can put together an email, just like bring all these resources to you in one concise email following the training. So keep an eye out for that. I know it's a lot. Thank you for bearing with us. Our next quarterly planners meeting is planned for April 23rd. Our plan is to do it here in Annapolis or at the Crownsville location. I think many of you have been to before. Thank you. We're going to be addressing some topics around surrounding some potentially new FIDS guidance and stream restoration guidance documents that we've been working on here at the commission. And then also introduce some tribal engagement policies that the commission is trying to push forward as part of our equity and outreach guidance. Hopefully we're bringing some new topics to you in April. So it'll be a good learning experience. So we hope you can make it. Keep an eye out for an email regarding that date and put a hold on your calendars for April 23rd. I can't think of anything else. Does anyone have any last minute questions? All right, thank you all for being here. Oh wait, Kyle.
Yes, I have just one general question, actually, not super related to either of the presentations, but so if there was a growth allocation that came through and then the commission approved it, and then afterwards the applicant wanted to slightly revise the location, what would be the normal process to do that revision? Would they need to come back to the commission again?
So it probably would depend on the type of, on the significance of the change, and what was approved by the commission. Like if the amount of growth allocation being used, or the area that's like how it's being mapped, like the actual change on the map, like if that is changing, I would say definitely yes, it would need to come back to the commission. If it's more related to the actual development that's happening on the site, then it kind of depends then. If it's like a really significant change, and it would change, the commission's, the information they were given when it was approved, then it might need to come back. But it's kind of more case by case, I would say.
Okay. All right.
If you have a specific project or something, Kyle, we can definitely talk.
Yeah, I'll research the area a little bit further and then we can talk about it. Yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Cool. Thank you, guys.
All right. Thank you all for being here and hope you have a good day. Stay safe out there with all the ice.
And warm.